The Locked On Podcast Network presents the NFL Big 3 in 30. The three biggest stories in the NFL from our local experts at the Locked On Podcast Network. We bring you the real story, why it matters, what's next, who wins the big game, and more, all in 30 minutes. The NFL Big 3 in 30 starts now with the biggest story in the NFL.
Two teams overcoming injuries to reach 4-1 set to meet at Raymond James Stadium.
You are Locked On NFL Crossover, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Croc, lots to get through here as the Bucs and 49ers meet again. And both of these teams, similar stories here. Both 4-1. Both have dealt with some major injuries to some key players. But as far as the 49ers are concerned, what is the biggest story there in San Francisco heading into this game?
I think right now for the 49ers is a couple of things. One, the 49ers are just 4-1 at this point in the season, especially with all the injuries that they've been dealing with. I mean, Brock Purdy missing multiple games. George Kittle, I think he played a quarter, like literally one quarter of the season of an actual game during the season, and he's been out ever since. There's no Brandon Ayuk. Ricky Pearsall has missed time. Nick Bosa is down for the season. And somehow, some way, there's a plethora more of injuries, but somehow, some way, the 49ers have figured out a way to be 4-1. I think a lot of it is due to the play of Mac Jones. And Mac Jones has done a terrific job, doing what they're asking of him. Not like they're saying, hey, you got to push the ball downfield a whole lot or you have to be Baker Mayfield. But he's throwing the ball a ton, and he's been fairly efficient for the 49ers. And he has really helped contribute to this 4-1 record that the 49ers have started with. So, and he's actually 3-0 as a starter. So I think those are the two big storylines. Again, how the 49ers have been able to hold up with the amount of injuries to key guys that they've had, and Mac Jones.
Yeah, Mac Jones has been super impressive. I've enjoyed watching him play. I was joking on my last episode at Locked On Bucs that I feel like Christian McCaffrey has entered the world of witchcraft, and he's the one sucking the life out of all these other players. Because if you were going to tell me before the season started that the 49ers would be ravaged with injuries on the offensive side of the ball, especially, my first thought would have been, oh, well, McCaffrey was probably the first one to go down, right? That's how it always goes. But he's been outstanding this year. Mac Jones has been really impressive. And I look at both of these teams and think, you know what? When these teams do get healthy, they're going to be even more dangerous. So this game in week 6 could have huge playoff implications with the direction that both of these teams are going. This could decide who's hosting a playoff game when all is said and done. And I'm not going to run through the laundry list of Buccaneers injuries. I've done that. That's been my top story every single week this year. The biggest one on Wednesday was Zion McCollum, who was one of the remaining starting outside corners with Dean and Morrison both out last week. He was spotted on the sideline at Bucs practice with his hand in a cast and his arm in a sling. He hasn't been ruled out for Sunday yet because he went through a procedure on his thumb, but just another injury in the secondary for the Bucs. But I'm going to talk about a little bit of the positive for the biggest story about the Buccaneers heading into this week, and that is the duo of Baker Mayfield and Emeka Egbuka. Baker has now entered the national conversation for NFL MVP with 4 fourth-quarter comebacks this season, and coming off of a game where he threw for 379 and 2 touchdowns while only throwing 4 interceptions. He's top 5 in passing yards, top 5 in touchdowns, top 10 in passer rating, only 1 interception on the year, and he's in the top 10 in rushing yards among quarterbacks, and he's done this without Jalen McMillan all season and without Mike Evans the last couple of games. But his top weapon has been Emeka Egbuka. He's top 5 in the NFL in receiving yards. He's tied for the 3rd most total touchdowns in the league. And to take it even a step further, he's the only rookie in the top 10 in receiving yards, and he has the fewest receptions of any player in the top 10 while having the most yards per reception of anyone in the top 25. Long story short, this kid is special, and he has been absolutely unguardable this season.
Yeah, it's been awesome just watching the ascension of him, man. I mean, the conversation with how well he's been playing and almost looking like a veteran is going back to training camp for Tampa Bay Buccaneers. There was a lot of rumbling coming out. Like, oh, he can't be that good. And then you watch him play and it's like, damn, he is that good. So he's been awesome. But the biggest storyline definitely Baker Mayfield, and I don't think it started this year. I think it started last year. That was the guy, and I talked a lot. I used him as an example when talking about the 49ers and being able to overcome injuries. Everyone wanted to make all these different excuses for Brock Purdy. I'm like, well, there's a guy over there playing in Tampa who is dealing with injuries to his receivers, and he's figuring out a way to keep the team afloat and ultimately kind of help lead them to the playoffs. There's always going to be things that these guys are going through. There's always going to be things that potentially could hold a quarterback back, and it's on the QB to figure out how to rise above all of that. And I think that started last season with Baker Mayfield throwing 40-plus touchdowns, and then it's carried over into this season where he's starting off very hot, and watching him really duel it out against Sam Darnold. And it was almost like, okay, who's going to blink first? It ended up being Sam Darnold throwing the interception late. But Baker Mayfield, he's been awesome. And he's one of the guys I feel like when you look at the 49ers, where they're at defensively, a lot of younger guys that they've had to count on, especially with the injuries, not having the pass rush you ideally would like. You look at Baker Mayfield and say, man, that's a guy that's dangerous. So how do you get him uncomfortable? How do you get him to potentially turn the ball over? I think that's probably one of the 49ers kind of pathways to winning this game. But that's going to be very tough because he's playing football at a high level right now.
Yeah, and to touch on the 49ers situation real quick, I know we're early in the week. We haven't even gotten the official practice report on Wednesday for the first practice of the week, but it sounds like George Kittle really is not in play for this game. But any updates, any rumblings about Brock Purdy, Ricky Pearsall, Juwan Jennings, Jennings, some of these other guys that are, potentially able to play?
Yeah, we'll see. I think we'll definitely know a little bit more by tomorrow, especially like Thursday's practice. Wednesday's practices, as we're recording right now, are typically like the first practice of the week for a lot of these guys. If I had to guess, I think there's a chance we see Pearsall and Juwan Jennings out there. I am not sure about Brock Purdy. It sounds like this is something that's going to kind of linger and carry on a little bit longer. So I think the Tampa Bay Buccaneers fans should expect to see a lot of Mac Jones. And who knows how healthy Mac Jones is? I can't wait to see the injury reports on him today, because that's a guy who over and over and over again had to pick himself off of the turf. He grabbed his knee one time. I'm like, what's going on? It was like he was adjusting the knee brace. He was throwing up on the sideline, like throwing up on himself. So he was really battling through a lot of different things. But he is a warrior. He battled through it, and hopefully he's healthy enough this week, because if not, there's a chance Tampa Bay may see a quarterback by the name of Martinez, who I have not seen take a snap for the 49ers this season.
Yeah, my eyes were glued on Thursday night. I saw Mac Jones go down. It looked like he was grabbing his calf, and I'm like, are you kidding me? This kid is playing so well, and he's in an environment where, almost not quite to the same level, but parallels to Baker Mayfield, right? He's in a situation that he's happy with. He's in a situation where his coaches, his players believe in him. It didn't feel that way in New England. Don't let him go down too when he's playing so well in place of Brock Purdy. But yeah, definitely keep an eye on those injury reports if you're a Bucs fan and you want to know potentially what kind of quarterback matchup you could be looking at here on a crossover Thursday. And let's take a look at some of these matchups, Croc, because there are some interesting ones in this game, especially when we're talking about a lot of key guys that are not going to be playing in this game. But when you're taking a look at the matchup, what's the first one that you're really honing in on?
Oh, the first matchup that I'm looking forward to seeing definitely is just the 49ers defensive line against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers offensive line. Again, we've talked about the 49ers D line, the injuries, Nick Bosa not being out there. And you have a lot of young guys like Alfred Collins playing in the interior there. On the outside, you have Michael Williams, and he slides inside for pass rush opportunities there. And then you have Bryce Huff, who's a newcomer coming over, traded from the Philadelphia Eagles. So how those guys match up with Tampa Bay's offensive line? And can the 49ers finally generate more of a pass rush? Because right now it's kind of been non-existent to this point, especially when you lose a guy like Nick Bosa. So that's the key matchup that I'm saying, because if you have a good pass rush, that helps everything. That helps your guys on the back end. That helps your cornerbacks. Again, we've talked about some of the terrific pass catchers that the Tampa Bay Buccaneers have, and a couple that are missing. But with the guys they do have, and you have some of these back end guys for the 49ers, Diamondo Lenore, and some of these younger guys, it really helps when you have a pass rush. So for the 49ers, they have to continue to try to get better each week. I think that's the first matchup that I'm watching come Sunday.
I feel like it might almost be a blessing in disguise for some 49ers fans that Bosa is not playing in this, because if he was, that Baker Bosa highlight from last year would be on a continuous loop on every football talk show all week long. And I'm sure Niners fans are real sick of seeing that one. They can go back and be like, yeah, but that stiff arm didn't win him the game. The 49ers still got the dub. But man, what a highlight that was last year. But yeah, I mean, I was looking at some of the numbers, and numbers only tell part of the story, right? Stats aren't everything. But I was like, man, the 49ers pass rush is not as formidable as it's been in years past. And I'm sure losing Bosa has an effect on that. But, I was looking, Baker might have a little bit of time in the pocket to let some of these plays develop. When I'm taking a look at this game, the first matchup that I'm looking at isn't about players on the field. It's about the chess match. I'm looking at Todd Bowles versus Kyle Shanahan. Bowles has not won against Shanahan since arriving in Tampa, and the Niners have averaged 29 points per game over their 4-game win streak against the Bucs going back to 2019. Now, as we've talked about, they're dealing with injuries, but they've dealt with injuries before against the Buccaneers, and it hasn't seemed to matter. Shanahan has found a way to make sure that this offense is running efficiently and able to put up a ton of points against, one of the best defensive minds in the NFL. So while the mini bye didn't help the Seahawks going into week 5 against the Bucs last week, I would expect that this type of thing is going to help the Niners, especially when they have guys that are so close to being able to return on the field. But Todd Bowles has to find some answers against the 49ers offense, and he's going to have to do it shorthanded with McCollum and Dean and Morrison's statuses all up in the air right now.
Well, fortunately for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, the 49ers, they're not a team that's prone to just throwing to the outside receivers. So really the matchups for you guys is going to be in the slot, right, against a 49er slot receiver, against the linebackers. Kyle Shanahan is widely known for putting linebackers and guys at the second level in conflict. So essentially trying to use their coverage rules against them, and a lot of times going off of the play action. Now, the 49ers run game hasn't been as good. So our team's still thinking, hey, first and foremost, we need to stop the run, load up, and then we'll play coverage from there. I think that's typically how 49ers get teams. But right now, I mean, Christian McCaffrey's averaging just over 3 yards per carry on the season. So the 49ers really haven't had much success on the ground. I wonder if teams are going to start saying, you know what, they can't really run the ball. So let's try to make them play into our hands coverage-wise and be able to dictate more of what the 49ers are doing. If you can do that, you may have more success. But definitely that matchup is not going to be the outside guys that you're missing like McCollum. It's going to be how are those safeties playing and how are those linebackers playing? And are they disciplined in their coverage rules?
Yeah, and that's been an issue for the Bucs this season. Levante David is not looking like Levante David of old. Servassier Dennis, while he has gotten better each and every week, he was a liability big time in the first month of the season. Is there another matchup that you're looking at in this game that really interests you in the way that the two sides match up?
Yeah, well, really, in Buka, right? We talked about him and him playing, receiver and how good he's been, early on in the season for the 49ers. Again, you watch some of the young guys that they have, and they got this kid, Upton Stout. He's been targeted a lot. He has given up some catches, but he's also competed at a very high level. Had an interception call back on kind of a ticky-tack call, if you ask a lot of the 49er fans, but he has been impressive just from the standpoint of just how well he's done with challenging receivers at the catch point. So, if you have Mbeka play in the slot and you have Upton Stout there, what does that look like? Because I think if I'm Tampa Bay, that may be something that I try and I challenge that young defensive back. Can we get him? And if you can early on, maybe they continue to try to target him. And then what do the 49ers do to really kind of, change what they're doing defensively to help the young guy out? But if he can stand up to that test right there, I think the 49ers should fare decent on the back end.
Yeah, we know he doesn't have the name recognition yet to get away with the defensive holds and the pass interferences that Quinyon Mitchell did when the Bucs faced the Eagles. But that's also something that Bucs fans are going to be interested in, because Godwin, while he's back, he's not back. So is this going to be the matchup where Godwin starts to be able to build a little bit of confidence, continue to shake more of the rust off, and start to find his rhythm with Baker Mayfield once again? The last matchup that I'm looking for, and it plays exactly into what you were just saying about the the struggles in the run game for the 49ers and Shanahan trying to get linebackers and safeties uncomfortable, I'm looking at how this Bucs defense is going to handle McCaffrey and Tonjes. So McCaffrey, obviously more effective in the passing game than in the running game this season. And the Bucs have struggled with giving up yards to running backs through the air. They gave up 100 to Bijan, over 60 to the Houston running backs, another 50 to the Jets running backs. Saquon Barkley was the Eagles' second leading receiver in week 4. And then on top of that, the Bucs are 23rd in the NFL against the tight end. They're coming off of the game where they allowed A.J. Barner to finish with over 50 yards and 2 touchdowns. Those are the two biggest factors that the Bucs are going to have to neutralize defensively if they're going to stay in this game. It's Tonjes and it's McCaffrey as a receiving back. If they go into this one missing their top 3 outside corners and that defense gets shuffled around again, they're going to struggle just like they did against Seattle, trying to find the right pieces to match up against these offensive weapons in San Francisco.
Most people can't name all their financial accounts or even what they're worth, whether it's a 401k or properties or investments. And when you don't have the full picture, you can end up leaving money on the table. That's why there is Monarch Money. It's an all-in-one personal finance tool that brings your entire financial life together in one clean, easy-to-use interface on your laptop or your phone. Monarch does the heavy lifting for you. You can link all your accounts in minutes, see clear data visuals, get smart categorization of your spending, and finally feel in control of your money without ever touching a spreadsheet. I linked all my accounts to Monarch and immediately spotted a few subscriptions I wasn't even using. Canceling those all can save you money every month. Don't let financial opportunities slip through the cracks. Use code LOCKEDONNFL at monarchmoney.com in your browser for half off your first year. That's 50% off your first year at monarchmoney.com with code LOCKEDONNFL.
Chiefs Lions on Sunday Night Football, a game I thought could be a preview of what we would see in this year's Super Bowl.
You are Locked On NFL Crossover, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
We're going to start with the CB injuries with the Detroit Lions and how this game is going to start off, because that's one of the biggest storylines in this game. Matt, when you look at how this is going to play out, you were talking about it kind of before we even started the show. This is a huge issue for Detroit right now.
It is, Chris and Ryan. Great to be with you guys. And look, the Lions are playing great football right now. Many, including ESPN and the herd hierarchy the other day. I had it on my show on Wednesday of the Lions number 1. People are power ranking Detroit up to that top spot where, of course, your Chiefs have been for so long. But right now, I mean, going into this game, you're still facing Mahomes, still facing Travis Kelce and good receivers. The Lions, their top 5 corners going into training camp in the preseason, 4 of the 5 are out. DJ Reed out for a while with a hamstring. Terrion Arnold going to be out at least this week and probably a few more with a shoulder. Ennis Rakestraw was put on season-ending IR at the start of the year. Khalil Dorsey now has an injury, their 4th corner, and he's going to be out for a little while, 4 weeks on the IR. So that leaves Amik Robertson, and then anybody's guess. I mean, Rock Yassin has played pretty well. They've got depth there. There's some guys they like, some young guys, and they've made some moves. But that's a tough road to talk about this week with Patrick Mahomes and next week with Baker Mayfield, without the guys that are stopping the guys on the outside. This is still a passing league. Lions pass rush has been really good this year. Hutchinson's playing unbelievably well, but I would think the Chiefs would be kind of picking on some of those corners, maybe just some home run balls down the field, hope for some pass interference or some holding, and find that as a spot that they can kind of take advantage of. What do you guys think?
I think that should be the way to go. I do see this as an offensive kind of game back and forth. We'll talk about that a little bit more coming up here. But on the injury report on Wednesday, another name in Brian Branch, somebody I didn't expect to see on there. At this point, are there enough bodies in the secondary for them to man and be able to run their scheme the way that I think that sometimes they can be very successful at? And with the Chiefs having a wide receiver core that is either banged up, substituted, or trying to find its way, that might be an interesting matchup. Do you think there's enough bodies in the secondary to really put it out there and be able to play their full game plan?
Yeah, I mean, I think Branch and Kirby Joseph are going to be fine as far as the safety tandem goes. They're healthy enough. They'll be out there, and that's as good a safety tandem as there is in the league. Those guys just do everything. And Branch, I love that you mentioned Ryan, is just an absolute stud and a missile out there in terms of against the run, against the pass. Doesn't matter. He's a special player. So yeah, I think they'll be okay. You know, you're throwing in guys, like I said, Rocky Yassin has played a lot of football. Avonte Maddox has played a lot. You know, Meek Robertson's been really good, but you know, eventually attrition catches up to you. We saw that with the 2024 Lions. There's just, you hope that that's it. And you hope that Arnold is back sooner than you think. And DJ Reed's back sooner than you think. But I think they'll be all right. It's just, you know, right now, the way the defense is playing, the linebackers have been unreal, and the pass rush has been better than expected. And like we'll talk about when we get to the keys here and D-line, O-line, Lions could be adding Lee McNeil this week to their defensive line, which no one's talking about. He's been working out and training and rehabbing so well that they think he might be able to play. So that'd be a huge kind of pick-me-up for that defensive line, which has already played pretty well.
Yeah, and you look at that, and we'll talk about the defensive line and the offensive line in just a couple minutes, but you look at how this game is going to play out. It's kind of surprising to me, and one of the things I brought up before we started is the Chiefs are actually favored in this game, which with the way that they've played doesn't make sense to me at all, because they have played so horribly. And you also mentioned this, Matt, Kansas City kind of needs this game more than Detroit does. Not saying that should matter, but the reality is Kansas City's 2-3. Going to 2-4 is going to be really detrimental to anything that they want to do in the postseason. Being 3-3 and then getting Rashee Rice back the next week would be huge for this team. But the biggest storyline from Kansas City is the inconsistency. Week to week, it's just been so different. Like you look at week 1, the defense couldn't do anything. Week 2, 3, and 4, their defense was probably the best unit on the team. And then the offense started to come alive against the Ravens and then really looked a lot better in week 5. But the defense kind of fell apart a little bit towards the end of the game. So it's the inconsistency of this team and things that happened last year. I think they were 11-0 in one-score games. This year they're 0-3. You can't just have. I mean, the amount of flip-flop from what you dealt with last year to what you're dealing with this year is crazy. And you always revert to the mean, but it's a lot different than you would expect for Kansas City right now.
Chris and Ryan, I got to ask, and I'm assuming you guys have talked about this, but like even that last play where Trevor Lawrence falls down, and everybody now has seen the footage of Chris Jones basically just stop play, which you never see Chris Jones do. But like, those things never happen to the Chiefs. And I know the national people, the Chiefs get all the calls. You guys got no calls the other night. It was wild. The
Thank
whistle
you.
that went against you. You have to say it. I know there is this narrative that Kansas City always gets the calls, and you went into that Giants game and everyone, there is no way they're going to lose on national TV and go to 0-3. But what is it? I mean, why does Chris Jones why does he just stop on a play like that when he never does that? Is it just one of those years?
It's one of those years where I think everybody has expectations. There's also the looky-loo thing of like, no matter what we do, Patrick's going to bail us out, right? This is superstar-itis is what I call it, because Chris Jones expected other people to make that play. He's been a one-man wrecking crew this whole season to this point. He's not getting a whole lot of support. I'm sure we'll talk about that coming up here shortly. But it's too much of expectation and not enough follow-through right now. This is a team that has enough experience that they kind of expect things to fall where they're able to make plays. And that's not true of the rest of the league. The rest of the league's like, you know what? Go prove it. You're getting old. You have to play every play. And that's what's catching up with them right now. They have to buckle down and really focus on making sure that they execute their game plan the way that they have to its fullest, not just 90, 95%.
It's wild. It's not, no one's used to this. And I know there's a lot of people that are like, great, we need to see somebody new in the Super Bowl representing the AFC. And obviously it's pretty wide open. Look, the league is wide open, but definitely was a head scratcher. I thought you guys had that game Monday night. I really did.
You were not the only one. I was sitting there watching the game thinking, especially with the way the offense started in the first 2 drives, it looked like they were just going to run away with that game. And it was going to be a at least 2-score game at the very end. And then all of a sudden, a couple mistakes happened and they just kind of gave the game away in multiple different ways.
The NFL season is here, and FanDuel is making sure you're ready for the weekend with a can't-miss offer. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. I love using FanDuel because it fits how I want to bet in the moment, whether it's player props, building a same game parlay, or jumping in live as the action unfolds. It's quick, it's easy, and the best way to add a little more energy to Sunday. So are you ready to play? Download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet.
The Washington Commanders are bringing the number one rushing offense in the NFL, along with some third down problems.
You are Locked On NFL Crossover, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Jayden Daniels returned to the lineup for Washington last week, has the Commanders feeling confident, but the team's glaring weakness is on third down, even on a pretty effective offense. Brutal test, potentially, over a turnover-hungry Bears team that defensively, Lauren, seems to live and die on big plays.
Yeah, that's kind of been their story. Like, they're not a great defense by any means, but they've just kind of scrapped and clawed and found ways to get the job done. Like when they played the Las Vegas Raiders before their bye week, it was a weird game where they had like 3 or 4 turnovers in there, but the Raiders only punted once all game. Like every drive was either points or a turnover, and only when they were like backed up in their own end zone did they end up really kind of punting the ball in there. So it was just kind of a tricky situation of like, if you can take care of the football, especially I think with the Commanders' number 1 ranked rushing offense against a really struggling Bears run defense that I know we'll talk about more as this episode goes on. I think they don't have to go big here. You can kind of game manage your way to a victory and wait for this defense to make some mistakes.
Yeah, and I think that's really got to be kind of the game plan here, right? I think the question, however, from the Commander side when it comes to that is Cliff Kingsbury kind of finally aware that his team, his offense is a rush first offense? You know, Cliff Kingsbury comes from the classic air raid, you know, family tree and all that stuff. And Locked On Commanders fans have heard me talk ad nauseum about how air raid isn't actually just about throwing the ball down the field. It's about using the entirety of the field, which includes, of course, the backfield and the short area of the field as well. But, you know, Cliff's brand of air raid certainly is a little bit deeper and likes to take those shots. We saw against the Los Angeles Chargers, he came out trying to go pass heavy, right? 2 of the first 3 plays of the game were passes, and that third play was a quarterback run. So he was very happy to have Jayden Daniels back. Now, fortunately for the Commanders, he did eventually move into the run game. He did end up leveraging that run, over 140 yards rushing for 3 out of the first 5 weeks. Twice they've run for over 200 yards. And this feels like a game that if Cliff comes out kind of understanding that and don't take the run away for the Chicago Bears and make them take it away themselves, then potentially they can have some of that similar success. But I know the Bears are also getting some help back. So what are they getting back this weekend, Lauren, and how could that maybe change some things?
Yeah, that's definitely kind of the big storyline right now is like getting healthier, but then like how much of a difference will that actually make? The big returns are slot cornerback Kyler Gordon, who we're kind of wondering, they've talked a lot this offseason about moving him around and not just keeping him in the slot. So we wonder, first game back, do they just put him in the slot and say, hey, let's start back where you were supposed to start before we get crazy? Or do they say, hey, well, the Commanders don't have any tape on us using you differently, so let's throw you all over the place in your first game back? That's one of the big question marks there. And then linebacker TJ Edwards. Both of these guys have missed most of the beginning of the season so far. It's been an impact in the run defense for sure when you're missing a linebacker and a slot cornerback who plays up near the line of scrimmage a lot and is a really key factor in that area. But it sounds like potentially still going to be missing somebody like Grady Jarrett on the interior of the defensive line, which is going to be a challenge there. And certainly some of their players on offense that could also pose their own challenges here. But I'm very worried about the Bears giving up the league high 6.1 yards per carry and the Commanders gaining the league high 5.9 yards per carry. This is the, very movable object against the very stoppable, or the unstoppable force against the very movable object.
I like the way you put that. Yeah, I mean, that number one rushing attack is producing 156.4 yards per game. I mean, that includes a week 2 performance from the Commanders offense where they only ran the ball on design plays 13 times. And, there's season production. The average per game could actually be better had the Commanders tried to run the ball a little bit more in that game. And in the red zone, they're scoring every time down, not touchdowns every time. 10 of 14 possessions in the red zone have produced touchdowns. The other 4 have produced field goals, but no turnovers on downs, no turnovers in general. So that's smart football. Because, I was watching that Raiders game on the way back from Los Angeles, and I just came away. And it's only one game, right? So it's very dangerous to try to make any sweeping judgments. But from that one game, their last game on the field, I'm like, man, if the Commanders play their usually smart brand of football, protect the football, don't throw interceptions, don't fumble it, things like that, then they're probably going to have a really good chance of winning this game. But third down is the failure point for the Washington Commanders. If the Chicago Bears have a chance here, that's where it's going to come. 29th in the NFL right now, Lauren. 32.7% conversion rate. 33% is the floor, right? Like 33% is you're doing bare minimum, and they're below that. I talked to Dan Quinn on Wednesday about how you have the number one rushing attack, yet you have one of the worst third down conversion rates. He talked about discipline and how the penalties are, they're getting maybe 6 yards on first down, maybe 2 yards on second down, then they get a penalty and it sets them back anyway. So they got all those rushing yards, but they're still in third and, manageable, but obviously not desirable. Where's the Bears defense been on third down so far? And what do you think their chances are of continuing that trend for the Washington Commanders offense?
Yeah, it hasn't been like particularly stellar or locked down, but I am interested in the battle of the penalties here too. Like the Bears have not been great on third down by any means because they give up these big chunk runs on first and second down, and then it becomes third manageable. And it's sort of this bend, don't break, hope you get a turnover on them before they get all the way down in the red zone or in the end zone. But the Bears have had plenty of penalties on them on both sides of the ball as well. And I think I saw we got a refereeing crew that leads the league in penalties handed out this year so far through the first 5 weeks. So it's going to be a battle of like who can get out of their own way in some of these situations and who can play the smarter, more disciplined brand of football. And I think a lot of Bears fans are pinning hopes on, hey, at the bye week, they're going to have an extra week here now that they figured some of that stuff out. They've gotten the timing and the discipline and the communication better to avoid those penalties. Because I think if you picked up the Bears team that just played against the Raiders and then instantly went right in the Commanders game and did the same thing, I think they're losing that game. But if the bye week is enough to figure some things out and get a little bit healthier, like that's really what they're pinning their hopes on to be able to pull off an upset here.
Yeah, absolutely. I think for the Washington Commanders side of this thing, you look at the discipline, you look at some of those things. 13-play, 99-yard game-sealing touchdown drive in Week 5 against the Los Angeles Chargers. That's got to give you a lot of confidence coming into this week. That's the last time we saw this offense on the field was doing that kind of thing. So if you can take that into this weekend, obviously it gives you a really good opportunity. And you know what, Lauren, we made it over 8 minutes in this Crossover Thursday episode, and the words Hail and Mary have not come out of our mouths because the truth of the matter is, and I agree with quarterback Jayden Daniels, who of course was asked about it. There's no dig on anybody. It has to be asked about. It has to be talked about. But he said that Hail Mary last year is not going to do anything for us this year.